Thank you. Here in this sanctuary of ancient dreams and wisdom and beauty, we come to grow, to be healed, to stretch mind and heart, to be challenged, renewed, to be helped in our own continuing struggles for meaning and for love, to help build a world with more justice and mercy in it, to be counted among the hopers and doers. In the face of cynicism, darkness, brutality around us and within, we seek to align ourselves with a living community that would affirm rather than despair, that would think and act rather than simply adjust and succumb. Here we invite the spirit of our own humanity and the healing powers under, around, through, and beyond it, to give us the nerve and grace, the toughness and sensitivity, to search out the truth that frees, and the life that maketh all things new.
And we'll sing. We laugh, we cry. Our hymn is number 354.
We
And we join in the words of our unison affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So be it. And good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, do it again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. Welcome those of you who have been here forever. Welcome those of you who are here for the first time. Welcome those who are here after a long absence. And it is so very good to be together. There is a lot going on in this service, and you don't need a whole lot of blather from me. So I'm going to do a little bit of a lightning round of announcements. First of all, I have been told that I should not fear looking foolish, but this is to call attention to the shout for climate justice, the shout heard around the world. We're going to have bikers muster on our town common at 12:15 following this service, and we will ride over to Concord, where first there will be a gathering on the front lawn of First Parish in Concord, and then we'll go over to the Old North Bridge, where at 2 o'clock there will be a rally for climate justice with a whole host of interfaith speakers, and should be quite an event. So be there or be foolish. And let's see, what else is going on? There were other things happening for the prelude today that were not in the order of service. We did have a quartet of Carol Kruzmark and Laura Kalb and Buffy Groves and Larry Hers, and they sang Palestrina's Sicut Cervus. And it took me a while to get the translation of Sicut Cervus, but it refers to the biblical text as the heart as in H-A-R-T, as the deer, as the heart longeth for the fount of water, and that was wonderful to have you begin with that. And we do have a different keyboardist today. Mr. Brad Connor is here. Robert Noble, our organist, had an unfortunate encounter with a utility knife yesterday and damaged his hand, and he's going to be out for some time, so Brad is going to be putting in some extra duty. Do look in the order of service at the announcements, and you'll note that Laura Fell-Skolton, our student minister, is leading a book discussion this afternoon, and she's also leading an event exploring the Psalms on Thursday afternoon coming up. So pay attention to those things. And there will be a discussion following this service. We particularly welcome Melissa Bartholomew, our guest speaker today, and our congregation president, Dee Russell, will introduce Melissa in a few minutes, but it's great to have Melissa and her family with us as well. I think that's enough, and so without further ado, we're at the conclusion of our annual pledge drive, and Renu is going to give us some closing words, and I'd have all of you applaud, but not all of you have gotten your pledge cards in yet, and so it's too soon to applaud. So come get after them, Renu.
I learned from the last one. So, hello on behalf of the Stewardship Committee. So this is not a stewardship testimonial moment so much as it is a stewardship call to action moment. So we're now at the end of our Stewardship Pledge campaign, and we've kept it very short this year to only a month. It ends tomorrow, everyone. Our goal is $450,000, which is a 7% increase over last year. So you're probably wondering how we've done so far, and here's the scoop. So many people have been so very generous and have been quick to turn in their pledge card, whether it was online, first time this year, or by email, or with the pledge card itself. So we're very grateful to all of you who've turned in your pledge card so far. However, we're only at $360,000. which is a full $90,000 short. And so we haven't heard back from about 1/3 of the congregation, which is a huge amount. We know that life and busy schedules often get in the way of good intentions, but we really need to hear from you now. The alternative is that we have to cut our budget. Do you want the church to have fewer sermons, or less heat in the winter, or fewer RE programs, or less music, or less social justice programs? I know I don't. Our pledges range from those who are able to give more than $8,000 to those who really are not able to give anything at all. And so we want to hear from you. Whether you can give a lot of money or very little money, we need to know how to budget in the coming year. So if you haven't yet pledged, please, please fill out a pledge card today. We'll have extras in the common room during community hour right after the service. And so if you need one, please come and get one. Again, we thank you all for being so very generous to keep this place going. Thanks.
Maybe next week you'll be allowed to applaud. We're going to hear from Holly Hosmer and from Ann Schmaltz, who are recently returned from Northeast India, a visit to the Unitarians in the state of Meghalaya, way up in Northeast India between Bhutan and Bangladesh. Holly and Ann, you're up.
For those of you who, of course, mostly know where India is, but for any children or others who don't, here is the United States on this side of the world, and on the other side of the world is India. So while we are awake this morning and sitting in church, the children in India are actually asleep. But when they wake up in the morning, 40 of them, here, let me put this down. 40 of them, these 40 right here, will be going to a school called the Annie Bar Memorial School in Lasatan outside Shillong in northeast India. And this is the school with which we are partners. And these 40 children welcomed us when we were there a month ago. They welcomed us with songs and with a special drill team that they had worked up. And they also welcomed us with projects, with drawings and different kinds of crafts. And so later, we hope in the year we'll be able to share with the children some of those things that they gave to us. But this particular thing was given to us, made for us by the 7th grade student, Fernando. They have a special emphasis on recycling in that school. So Fernando, here, if you will hold this part here. Fernando made this for us and made a special presentation. So, and I am hoping that it will work. So hold it right up there, Holly. He made this out of things that he had found in the trash, and the school children all decorated it. These here are old pens, used pens, and all these shiny papers come from wedding festivities because that's part of the wedding festivities. The children in Northeast India, almost everybody in Northeast India are actually Christian, very different from the rest of India. They wear different clothing, they have different culture, and they have a very different religion. And of these people who descended from the Christians, the Unitarians have about 31 churches and about 28 schools, and people from all over the United States are partners, churches, Unitarian churches, are partners with the schools and churches. And so we were with a whole group of people who were visiting all these schools and churches. So later we'll bring you more news from there.
Let me add one thing, because I was a bit confused. I was surprised to see how Unitarian the people were. She mentioned they were Christians, but the leader who started the Unitarian movement was trained in a missionary school and decided he did not believe in the Trinity. He did not believe in all these things, a moment many of us have come to. And he started a church which he later discovered was Unitarian. This here.
So that man was Hajom Kisser Singh, and you may remember the story that he got converted to Welsh Presbyterianism at one point in his life, and then started to have doubts about hellfire and damnation. And he said, whatever happened to the simple, loving religion of Jesus? And the missionaries looked at Hajom Kisser Singh and said, you sound like a Unitarian. And he said, how can I find out more? And the next thing you knew, there were thousands and thousands of Unitarians in Northeast India. To mercy, pity, peace, and love, our kids and teachers are going to go off to their in-gathering as we sing number 93.
Good morning, I'm Cindy Bartholomew, a member of the pastoral care team. And at this moment, we pause in our service to share with each other our personal joys or sorrows. So if you'd like to go forward, light a candle, please come now and focus your thoughts and try to keep. I'll light this final candle for those joys and sorrows we keep silently in our hearts. And after the service, I'll remain at the candle stand if you'd like to light the candle in private.
I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, whom we have called by many names, in thanksgiving and in anguish, we come in gratitude. Thank you for the beauty of this earth, for the faces of our loved ones, for the good food we eat every day, for the soft rain that promises new life, for the tree peepers at last announcing spring. We come in gratitude. Some of us come in pain. Our lives are filled with great, quiet losses, and we do not know how to escape this misery. In sadness, we long for kindness, reconciliation. We are upset sometimes by our own actions. We are horrified by the news around the world and down the street. We are stoking our resentments in the fire of jealousy and entitlement. We are hurt or angry or sorry, and we long for life made new. Power of love, we are here to be aware of all that we are and all that we are not, so that we are clear in our journey together, both about what we might do and what we might refrain from doing. We trust that unity comes from diversity. Only in fear or greed are we divided. Today, on Patriots' Day weekend, we honor all those who serve or served our country, those who have labored long on our behalf in war and peace on foreign and domestic lands, those among us who did not know if they would ever return or did not know who they would be when they returned. We give thanks for these patriotic men and women who fought and marched and flew and sailed into the unknown. Like you, we know that no peace lies in the future which is not hidden in this present moment. Spirit of love and all that is holy, we come grateful and miserable and content and upset. We know that you are with us in all times and all moods. Guide us in whatever state you find us in. Guide us to be brave and kind, to seek truth and beauty, to treasure our differences, and to forgive ourselves and all others as each day breaks. Amid the sudden shout of spring, we come together to praise, remember, envision, sing, reach, thank, and to say for our heart's sake this prayer. May we live fully, love deeply, learn daily, and speak truly, that we might together leave the sacred legacy of a better world. Amen.
Good morning. I am pleased to be introducing Melissa Bartholomew this morning. I heard Melissa speak at a Lifelong Learning Institute seminar on nonviolent resistance and was impressed with what she had to say. I thought her experience and views would be great to share with all of you. I am excited to hear her speak again. Melissa's ministry passion is racial reconciliation and healing through forgiveness. Prior to becoming a Christian minister, Melissa practiced public interest law for 10 years in Seattle, Washington. She is also a certified mediator and mediated child welfare cases as the dependency mediator for King County Superior Court in Seattle. Melissa gives presentations and facilitates conversations on forgiveness and racial reconciliation, justice, and healing. She is in the final year of the Master of Divinity program at Harvard Divinity School and graduates in a month. Melissa Bartholomew.
Good morning. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Dee, for inviting me and for your introduction and for the wonderful hospitality and for my classmate, Laura, who I'll be graduating with in May. The reading from this morning is Please Call Me by My True Names by the Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. I have a poem for you. This poem is about three of us. The first is a 12-year-old girl, one of the boat people crossing the Gulf of Siam. She was raped by a sea pirate and after that, she threw herself into the sea. The second person is the sea pirate, who was born in a remote village in Thailand. And the third person is me. I was very angry, of course, but I could not take sides against the sea pirate. If I could have, it would have been easier, but I couldn't. I realized that if I had been born in his village and had lived a similar life, economic, educational, and so on, it is likely that I would now be that sea pirate. So it is not easy to take sides. Out of suffering, I wrote this poem. It is called, Please Call Me by My True Names, because I have many names, and when you call me by any of them, I have to say yes. Don't say that I will depart tomorrow. Even today, I am still arriving. Look deeply. Every second, I am arriving to be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with still fragile wings, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in a stone. I still arrive in order to laugh and to cry, to fear and to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. I am the mayfly metamorphosing on the surface of the river, and I am the bird that swoops down to swallow the mayfly. I am the frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond, and I am the grass snake that silently feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks, and I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I am a member of the Politburo with plenty of power in my hands, and I am the man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. And my pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills the four oceans. Please call me by my true names, so I can hear all of my cries and my laughter at once, so I can see that my joy and my pain are one. Please call me by my true names, so I can wake up, and so the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. Thank you.
Freely we have received, freely give. For the good work of this congregation within and far, far beyond these walls, our offering will gratefully be received.
When my
As Dee mentioned, I'm here because she was a part of a class I had the honor of speaking to back in the fall, and I talked about my experiences in Rwanda and the post-conflict peace work that they're doing in that country. So I'll be telling you a little bit about those experiences. And if you would join me in just a brief moment of quiet stillness before I begin, and a word of prayer. Spirit of love and light, we thank you for your presence. Have your way as our hearts open even wider. Amen. Imagine living in a country where forgiveness is incorporated into national policy. Well, there is such a place, and it's Rwanda. Rwanda is a small country in Central East Africa where genocide occurred 21 years ago and killed nearly 1 million people. It also devastated the country economically. Homes and businesses were destroyed. The country was flatlined. But today, the country is revived and has been rebuilt, and forgiveness has played a major role in its transformation. It has been the basis for the country's and the people's reconciliation and healing work. Many of the survivors of genocide have gone through trauma healing programs and also faith-based reconciliation programs, which have enabled them to forgive and in some instances even reconcile with perpetrators of the genocide who were responsible for killing their loved ones. It's remarkable. When I first began learning about the incredible work of forgiveness and reconciliation happening in Rwanda, I began thinking about how I could apply what they are doing to the work of racial reconciliation and healing through forgiveness that I am called to do in this country. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Rwanda and take a course in reconciliation and forgiveness. So I want to share a little bit of what I learned from the Rwandans during that experience and how my understanding of those lessons have evolved over time. One of the guest presenters in the course was an extraordinary woman named Agnes. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Agnes. Agnes is a genocide survivor. She lost 6 of her 7 children in the genocide, and she also lost her husband. They were all brutally murdered. Agnes survived being tortured and raped. She suffered tremendously after the genocide, and she explained how there was a period afterwards when she literally went mad and she had to be institutionalized. But she went through a trauma healing program and a faith-based reconciliation program, and through those programs, over time, she was able to begin healing. It was hard work, but it happened over time, gradually. Agnes is a Christian woman, and she explained how important her faith is in helping her through the ongoing process of healing and recovery from those traumatic experiences. I remember when she first began telling her story, she was sitting down, she was tearful, we were handing her tissues. But as she began explaining how her faith empowered her to heal and to forgive the people who killed her family, she literally began to rise up. She glowed and she was radiant. She began beaming love and light. And here is what Agnes told us about forgiveness. She said, "Forgiveness gives you a special breath, and you are beautiful. You start walking eloquently, not fearing anything." Agnes embodied forgiveness. There's a theologian named L. Gregory Jones who writes about the concept of embodying forgiveness, and he describes forgiveness as a character trait that must be embodied. He says it becomes embodied when it becomes a way of life. Forgiveness has become Agnes's way of life. It is embedded in her way of being. Not only did she forgive the killers of her family members, she also worked to become trained as a facilitator for one of the reconciliation programs and now helps other genocide survivors work through their own process of forgiveness. And Agnes is just one example of many Rwandans who've embraced forgiveness as a way of being. Now, as I said earlier, when I went to Rwanda, I went with the aim of learning lessons of forgiveness and reconciliation that I could bring back home and apply to the work of racial reconciliation here. I went to Rwanda several years before coming to Harvard Divinity School. I was enrolled in a Christian theological seminary in Seattle. And one of the reasons I came to Harvard was to be able to develop a new paradigm for racial reconciliation and healing through forgiveness that engages people of all faiths, philosophies, backgrounds, and people with no faith affiliation at all. So one of the skills I've developed at Harvard is the capacity to translate the Christian faith-based message of forgiveness I learned in Rwanda into terms that people of all faiths or people who do not claim a particular faith or do not believe in God may embrace. So I believe the forgiveness displayed through many of the people in Rwanda can be viewed as an ethical process that fosters community. You see, Rwandans have incorporated forgiveness into their national policy because they believe that their country would have no future without forgiveness. It's the same belief that Archbishop Desmond Tutu articulated in South Africa during the Truth and Reconciliation process. 5 years ago, the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, delivered a speech at a ceremony commemorating the 16th anniversary of the genocide, and he said, "We are here to remember. Remembering is a must and an obligation. And in remembering, we must also forgive. It is a duty to forgive those who sincerely seek to be forgiven." Rwandans understand forgiveness as an essential element to reestablishing the communities and thus rebuilding their nation. In 2001, in an effort to address the backlog of legal cases against the perpetrators of genocide, and to address the lack of space in prisons, the government established a community court system called the Kakacha Court System, whose mission was to achieve truth, justice, and reconciliation. Its aim was to promote community healing by making the punishment of perpetrators faster and less expensive to the state. Thousands of prisoners were released from prison through this process, and they had to appear before judges made up of community members who listened to their confessions and would determine whether they were being authentic. And if they determined that they were, then they were released back into the community and had to do community service. The community service included such acts as helping to build homes for people in the community who had lost their homes during the genocide. Rwandans knew that no matter how horrific the acts of genocide were, or the acts of the perpetrators were, the perpetrators could not be in prison forever. They would have to return to the community eventually. And in order to rebuild their communities, they had to be intentional about trying to help the perpetrators and the survivors reconcile and live with each other. I met perpetrators who had gone through this community court system, as well as other survivors who had their homes rebuilt by prisoners. It's a powerful process. And it was wonderful to meet people who had gone through this experience and actually reconcile with people who had killed their family members. This is forgiveness utilized as an ethical process that fosters community and rebuilds nations. It's not perfect, and the system has not been without criticisms, but it has helped, along with the reconciliation programs and the trauma healing programs, to heal individuals and rebuild communities. Their communitarian ethic has contributed to the strength of their economy. The current state of their country, a country that was devastated just 21 years ago, is now ranked 46th in the world by the World Bank's Doing Business survey. They're the third best in sub-Saharan Africa, above Kenya and Nigeria. Their status reflects a country comprised of people who have committed to embracing forgiveness as an ethical response to violence and pain in order to rebuild and restore their nation. The Rwandans who embody forgiveness embody the message of Thich Nhat Hanh's poem, Agnes, through her way of being, is saying, I am the genocide survivor who lost her family, and I am the genocide perpetrator who took them from me. These powerful lessons from Rwanda have stayed with me, and they inform my sense of community. They inform the racial reconciliation healing work that I do. They influenced the work I did a few years ago in Seattle. After I returned from Rwanda, I was appointed by the City Council to serve on the Office of Professional Accountability Review Board to review the practices of the Seattle Police Department. And I served on that board during a time when the police department had come under great scrutiny as a result of some challenging incidences. One white police officer had fatally shot a mentally challenged homeless Native American man who had waved a knife while crossing the street. Another white officer had punched an African American teenage girl in the face after she jaywalked across the street and interfered with a situation involving an officer and one of her friends. These and other incidences helped to create a huge divide between communities of color and the Seattle Police Department. So our review board endeavored to engage the community and the police in a collaborative process that would help the groups to develop effective ways to communicate and strengthen their relationships. Throughout the planning process, we met with many people from the community and with members of the police department, including the chief of police. And as we met with the groups, we reminded ourselves of what I learned in Rwanda about community, that the so-called outsiders or perpetrators are part of the community too. The police officers were important members of the community that deserved our love and respect, just like the other members of the community. Please call me by my true names. I am the member of the marginalized community who has been subjected to aggressive police tactics, and I am the police officer who wields his power without restraint. I carried this truth with me last August to Ferguson, Missouri. In late August, about 2 weeks after the unarmed Black teenager Michael Brown was killed by a police officer, I drove 20-plus hours along with 12 other students from Harvard, most of us from Harvard Divinity School. And we drove to Ferguson, compelled by a strong need to do something in response to Michael Brown's death. We went to make the statement that Black bodies matter and to stand in solidarity with the people of Ferguson, Missouri. The morning before we left, I woke up with a message that had been placed in my spirit. It was a message that let me know that we were going to Ferguson to be a healing presence in that community. We left on a Friday evening, we drove all night and arrived Saturday afternoon. And after getting settled in the dorms where we stayed in St. Louis and meeting with our professor, Jonathan Walton, who met us there and initiated the trip, we headed straight to Ferguson, and we headed to Florissant Street, where the protests were being held. We got to a mall where police had set up their operations prior to getting to the street where the protests were, and that mall was like a military operation. There were tanks, fire trucks, police cars, army fatigues. It looked like they were set up for war. We finally made it down the street to where the protests were, and the atmosphere was calm. There were people camped along the side of the road, some sitting, some standing. They'd been there for days. And there was a group of family organizations leading a march. Some of us joined that group. Some of us talked with people on the side of the road, made signs, talked to children. We took in the energy of the people. One young lady told us that she'd been there the night when the police had ignited tear gas. There were people of all ages, young and old, elders. They were all there. And then we encountered another group, the police department. And a couple of us saw Officer Ron Johnson, the African-American state police officer who was appointed to take the lead during the crisis. And they talked to him, and he was excited about our presence. So those that talked to him came over and got a couple of us to go over and meet him. And we gathered and talked to him and discovered that he was with some other officers as well, other officers from Ferguson. And we talked to them, and they were all shocked that we had just driven 20 hours to Ferguson. And Officer Johnson expressed that he wished the media was still there to see that all the outside people were not agitators. And I told Officer Johnson that we didn't come all the way to Ferguson just for a one-time visit. We wanted to be able to be integral in the work, to maintain ties and support the community. And I asked him for suggestions about how to do that. And he said, there are Fergusons all over the country. Take what you learned here back to your community and address the Ferguson issues there. It was nice to be able to interface with the police. And then some of us thought, we weren't really comfortable meeting with the police. We weren't really sure. We weren't really certain what the perception might have been. And I thought about it. I thought about it as we headed back to our dorms. And I was preparing to end the evening. God spoke to me again in that same quiet space in my heart and spirit where God had spoken to me before we left for our trip, and reminded me of the lesson I'd learned in Rwanda, the lessons reiterated in Seattle, that the police, even the police of Ferguson, are part of the community too. We were sent to be a healing presence in the community, and we were sent to minister to all the people in the community, and the police were included in that group as well. As I reflected back on that time recently, I wish that we had taken time to pray with the police. We prayed before we went down to the protest area, and we included some people who were in the parking lot where we parked our van. And I wish we had taken time to pray with the police before we left them. You see, embodying forgiveness and practicing it as a way of life, like many Rwandans, means viewing everyone through the eyes of love, mercy, and compassion. It means remembering the humanity in those who have done harm or engaged in unjust practices, but who still deserve our mercy and our forgiveness. Thich Nhat Hanh's request to call him by his true names is one that reflects the South African philosophy of Ubuntu, the understanding that my humanity is completely tied to your humanity. I'm completely tied to you, and I'm not completely human without recognizing my tie to you. We see people carrying signs that say, I am Michael Brown. We see them during the protests. But we don't see those same people, at least I haven't seen those same people carrying signs that say, I am Darren Wilson, the man who killed Michael Brown. Like I said, when I went to Rwanda, I thought my intention was to try to learn lessons to apply to the work of reconciliation and healing here. And I initially thought my work was to try to figure out how to get the United States government to realize its moral and ethical responsibility to seek forgiveness from African Americans, the descendants of Africans who were enslaved in this country, for centuries of slavery and the years of Jim Crow segregation and racial oppression that's still going on in various forms. There's never been a formal government apology issued to African Americans. The pain and the trauma and the tears of my ancestors are deeply embedded in my DNA. But in the last year, I've come to realize that that is not my work. It's important, but it's not the work for me to lead. That's not why I was blessed to go to Rwanda. What I learned through Agnes and through other Rwandans who have embodied forgiveness is that my work is about the internal work of forgiveness, not about seeking a government apology. My work first starts within me to heal from generational trauma that has been passed down from my ancestors and lives within the spirit, bodies, and memories of all of us who descend from the Africans who were enslaved in this country. and to work on our healing through forgiveness and through therapeutic methods to treat the trauma and the unhealed wounds. What Agnes and others helped me to see is that forgiveness can help you breathe new life into dead spaces of the past and uproot all of the pain and the bitterness and the resentment that breeds from any trace of unforgiveness that lingers in the heart. And there is generational healing work for all of us to do in this country. So my work is the internal work of healing through forgiveness, which empowers the descendants of enslaved Africans to heal from historical racial oppression and from the everyday manifestations of racism, so that our work of healing through forgiveness can become a catalyst for the restoration and racial healing that this country so desperately needs. Please call us by our true names. We are the descendants of the enslaved, and we are the descendants of the slave masters. And in our true names, we find hope in the work of forgiveness we must all have the courage to do together. Amen.
Thank you, Melissa. And remember, everybody, there will be a service discussion. Go get your coffee and bring it carefully back into the sanctuary, and we'll regroup here in just a few minutes. And now we'll sing, "We'll Build a Land," number 121.
Land
As we depart from this place, let us remember as we greet each other the principle of Ubuntu. I am because you are. Our humanity is inextricably linked. Let us live into this knowledge and let it reflect our way of being together in communion with one another, practicing love and kindness and forgiveness. Amen.